Most people think they have real friends. But if that were true, feeling lonely wouldn't be this common. The hard truth is this: many of the people you call friends are only present when life is easy, predictable, and comfortable. The moment you struggle, change, or stop playing the role they expect, things quietly shift. Most people don't realize this until they are emotionally drained, disappointed, or completely alone during a hard moment. Today, we are not talking about the comforting idea of friendship. We're talking about the psychological reality most people never hear. Welcome to Dud Psychology. Let's start with a truth that most people avoid because it's uncomfortable. Most of the people you call friends are not actually friends. They are familiar faces. People you grew up with, people you work with, people you share routines with. And there is a big psychological difference between familiarity and real connection. Just because someone has been in your life for a long time does not mean they are emotionally safe for you. Real friendship is not measured by history. It's measured by how you feel in your nervous system when you're with someone. Do you feel calm? Or do you feel like you're constantly adjusting yourself? Here's something most people don't notice. If you are always filtering your words, hiding parts of your personality, or avoiding honesty just to keep the relationship smooth, your body stays in a low-level stress state. You may not feel it immediately, but over time, it shows up as exhaustion, irritability, and emotional numbness. This is where many people get confused. They think something is wrong with them. They blame work, age, or stress. But the real drain often comes from relationships where you're never fully relaxed. I've seen people who are socially active, always around others, always replying to messages, yet they feel deeply lonely. That kind of loneliness is worse than being alone, because your brain learns that connection itself is unreliable. One person described it perfectly: "I'm always with people, but I'm never myself." That sentence explains the illusion of modern friendship. Social media makes this worse. We confuse interaction with connection. Likes, comments, and constant messaging create the appearance of closeness, but your nervous system doesn't care about appearances. It only cares about emotional safety. And when that safety is missing, the brain stays alert, even in a crowded room. Here's a key point most people never learn. Presence does not equal loyalty. Time does not equal depth. Many friendships are conditional. They work when life is light, roles are clear, and nobody is uncomfortable. But the moment you struggle, grow, or change, the connection weakens. Not because you did something wrong, but because the relationship was never built for depth. Your body remembers every moment you felt dismissed, every time you needed support, and felt emotionally ignored. Even if you tell yourself it's not a big deal, your nervous system records it. Over time, trust fades quietly. And here's something even more important. Shallow friendships don't just fail to support you, they block space for real ones. Just like junk food fills your stomach but starves your body, surface-level relationships fill your calendar but starve your emotional needs. When your life is full of these connections, there is no room for depth. Many people stay in these relationships out of fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of being seen as difficult. But staying where you constantly shrink yourself is one of the quietest forms of self-abandonment. Real friendship doesn't drain you. It doesn't confuse you. It doesn't make you question your worth after every interaction. Real friendship feels steady, calm, safe. And once you understand that, you stop counting friends and start noticing impact. You start paying attention to how you feel after interactions, not how long the relationship has existed. That awareness is where real clarity begins. Now that you understand why many friendships feel empty, we need to talk about something more serious. Not obvious toxicity, not shouting, insults, or open conflict, but the quiet damage caused by relationships that look normal on the outside and slowly wear you down on the inside. Most toxic connections are not dramatic. They don't explode. They erode. They show up as small moments. Jokes that don't feel right. Advice that lowers your confidence instead of strengthening it. Silence when you needed support the most. Nothing big enough to complain about, but enough to leave you feeling heavy afterward. This is where many people get stuck. Because when there's no clear conflict, the mind says, it's fine. But the body says something very different. From a psychological and biological point of view, being around emotionally unsafe people keeps your nervous system slightly activated all the time. Your body stays alert. Cortisol, the stress hormone, stays higher than it should. Not enough to cause panic, but enough to cause fatigue, poor sleep, low motivation, and mental fog. Many people think something is wrong with them. They say, I'm tired all the time, or I can't focus, or I don't feel like myself anymore. Here's the hook most people miss. Sometimes the problem isn't what you're doing, it's who you're around. Your brain is constantly scanning for safety. When you're with people who subtly judge you, compete with you, or invalidate your feelings, your nervous system reads that as threat, not danger, threat. And long-term low-level threat is exhausting. This is why you can leave a social gathering feeling drained even when nothing bad happened. No argument, no tension, just a quiet sense of heaviness. Your body did the calculation before your mind caught up. Another trap people fall into is confusing loyalty with tolerance. They stay in unhealthy friendships because they believe leaving would make them selfish, cold, or ungrateful. They treat history like a contract, but history alone does not earn lifelong access to your emotional energy. Here's the reality. Loyalty that costs your mental health is not loyalty. It's self-neglect. I once observed someone whose anxiety never went away, no matter how healthy his habits were. He exercised, ate well, slept enough, but his body was always tense. When we looked closer, the pattern was obvious. His social circle was built on constant criticism disguised as humor. He laughed along so he wouldn't seem sensitive. But his body never laughed. When he slowly created distance, something changed. His anxiety dropped. His sleep improved. Even his posture shifted. That's not mindset. That's physiology responding to safety. Toxic connections also change how you see yourself. When subtle negativity is repeated over time, the brain starts to internalize it. You second-guess your decisions. You hesitate to speak. You doubt emotions that were once clear. And here's a crucial point. People don't need bad intentions to cause harm. Some people are insecure. Some are emotionally immature. Some lack awareness. The nervous system doesn't care about intent. It responds to impact. That's why awareness matters more than blame. After interactions, ask yourself simple things. Do I feel calmer or heavier? Clear or confused? Grounded or small? Those answers are data. Not everyone who drains you is a bad person, but not everyone deserves close access to you either. Emotional closeness must be earned through consistency, respect, and care, not assumed through time or proximity. Many people fear that creating distance will make them lonely, but often the opposite happens. When toxic connections fade, your nervous system finally relaxes. And from that calmer state, real connection becomes possible. You cannot heal in an environment that keeps draining you. Choosing safety over familiarity is not selfish. It's necessary. Not all emotional harm comes from loud or obvious behavior. Some of the most damaging people in your life never raise their voice, never insult you directly, and never look aggressive. In fact, they often seem reasonable, calm, and even supportive. That's what makes subtle manipulation so dangerous. These people don't control you through force. They control you through doubt. Over time, they slowly train you to question your emotions, your reactions, and your judgment. Not all at once. Quietly. Gradually. Until you stop trusting yourself and start looking to them for validation. Here's where the damage begins. One of the most common tools used by subtle manipulators is emotional invalidation. You express discomfort, and they respond with things like, "You're overthinking," or "You're too sensitive," or "That's not what I meant." Each comment seems small on its own. But repeated over time, your brain learns a dangerous lesson. Your emotions can't be trusted. And when you don't trust your emotions, you become easier to control. Another powerful pattern is inconsistency. Some days they're warm, attentive, and supportive. Other days they're distant, cold, or dismissive. Your nervous system doesn't like uncertainty, so it tries to fix the situation. You adjust your behavior. You become more careful, more accommodating, more focused on not upsetting them. This is an important hook most people miss. Unpredictable approval is more addictive than consistent care. From a neurological perspective, this activates the brain's reward system, the same system involved in addiction. You start waiting for the good version of them to return, believing that if you just act right, things will stabilize again. Gaslighting is another form of subtle control. It happens when someone repeatedly denies your reality. They may say, "That never happened," or "You're remembering it wrong," even when you're sure of your experience. Over time, this weakens your confidence in your own memory and perception. The real damage of gaslighting isn't the argument. It's the long-term confusion it creates. People exposed to this pattern often become anxious, indecisive, and emotionally dependent, not because they are weak, but because their internal compass has been quietly disrupted. Another common tactic is playing the victim. Whenever you express a need or set a boundary, the focus shifts back to their pain. You end up feeling guilty for having emotions at all. Slowly, your needs disappear from the relationship, and everything revolves around protecting theirs. This creates imbalance. You adjust. They receive. Many people stay in these dynamics because there's no single moment they can point to and say, "This is wrong." There's no clear betrayal. Just a constant feeling of confusion, guilt, or emotional fatigue. Your body, however, understands. If you feel anxious before interacting with someone, relieved when they're not around, or mentally replay conversations afterward, those are not random reactions. They are stress responses. Healthy relationships do not leave you confused. They do not make you doubt yourself. They do not require you to abandon your intuition. Recognition is the turning point. Once you see the pattern, it loses power. You stop over-explaining. You stop justifying boundaries. You stop chasing approval. Distance becomes necessary, not as punishment, but as protection. You don't regain control through confrontation. You regain it through clarity. And when your thoughts, emotions, and actions begin to align, manipulation can no longer take hold. Once you start recognizing which relationships drain you, the goal is not to isolate yourself. That's a common fear, but it's not the answer. The real goal is to become intentional. Most people never actively choose their social circle. It forms automatically through work, family, school, or routine. And once it's formed, it stays mostly unchanged, not because it's healthy, but because it's familiar. Here's an important distinction. Familiarity feels comfortable, but comfort is not the same as safety. Rebuilding your circle starts with accepting a simple fact. Your time, energy, and attention are limited. Every relationship uses some of those resources. When they are spent on people who don't respect you, listen to you, or support you, there's very little left for peace or growth. The first step is defining your non-negotiables. These are not demands or expectations you force on others. They are internal standards. Things like basic respect, emotional consistency, honesty, and availability. Without these, no relationship can hold real depth. Here's a quiet hook most people overlook. If something is missing at the foundation, effort won't fix it. Next, start paying attention to how you feel after interactions, not during them. During conversations, we often stay distracted or perform socially. Afterward, your nervous system tells the truth. Do you feel calm and grounded, or tense and mentally heavy? That information matters more than explanations. Rebuilding does not require confrontation. In fact, constant confrontation often keeps you emotionally entangled. What works better is adjustment. You reduce availability, you stop over-initiating, you create space. Healthy relationships naturally adapt to this. Unhealthy ones react with guilt, pressure, or manipulation. Their reaction reveals their role. Boundaries are often misunderstood. They are not walls meant to push people away. They are filters. They allow emotionally mature people to stay and emotionally draining patterns to fade. Another mistake people make is believing they need many friends to feel fulfilled. That's not how emotional regulation works. 1 or 2 emotionally safe relationships can calm your nervous system more effectively than a large group built on surface interaction. Depth requires fewer connections, not more. As your circle changes, your emotional baseline begins to shift. You feel clearer, more stable, less reactive. Not because life became easier, but because your environment stopped constantly activating your stress response. It's also important to understand that rebuilding your circle doesn't mean cutting everyone off. It means changing access levels. Some people stay at a distance. Some remain casual. Very few earn closeness. That selectiveness is not arrogance. It's emotional intelligence. You're not rejecting people. You're protecting your nervous system. And when your system is regulated, you show up better, calmer, more present, more authentic. The goal isn't to create a perfect social life. It's to create one that supports who you are now, not who you used to be. And when your relationships stop draining you, you realize something important. Peace is not something you chase. It's something that appears when you stop forcing connection where it doesn't belong. Your intuition usually knows the truth long before your mind is ready to accept it. That quiet discomfort you feel around certain people is not random. It's your brain recognizing patterns faster than conscious thought. Intuition is not fear. It's fast awareness. Most people ignore it because it doesn't come with proof. There's no clear sentence, no obvious event, no dramatic moment that justifies pulling away. So they wait. They tell themselves they're being dramatic, sensitive, or unfair. Here's the problem. By the time something becomes obvious, emotional damage has already been done. Guilt is the main reason people stay in draining relationships, not because those relationships are healthy, but because we're taught that prioritizing ourselves is selfish. We're told to be patient, understanding, forgiving, even when it costs us our emotional stability. But there is a critical difference most people never learn. Loyalty is not the same as self-abandonment. If staying connected requires you to constantly suppress your feelings, explain your boundaries, or tolerate discomfort, that's not loyalty. That's conditioning. Letting go doesn't have to be dramatic. In fact, the healthiest form of release is usually quiet, less availability, less emotional investment, fewer explanations. You stop trying to be understood by people who consistently misunderstand you. At first, this feels uncomfortable. Familiar patterns feel safe to the brain, even when they're harmful. Breaking them can trigger guilt, anxiety, or fear of loneliness. This is an important hook. Discomfort does not always mean you're doing something wrong. Sometimes it means you're doing something new. When you step back from draining relationships, your nervous system goes through a recalibration phase. Things may feel empty at first. Quiet. Unfamiliar. But that space is not a problem, it's recovery. Solitude during this stage isn't loneliness. It's regulation. Your thoughts slow down. Your emotional reactions soften. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You start trusting your internal signals again. This is your system returning to baseline after being overstimulated for too long. Another source of guilt comes from worrying about how others will react. People fear being labeled cold, distant, or selfish. But here's the truth. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotional responses to your boundaries. Healthy people adjust. Unhealthy dynamics resist, and their reaction often confirms why distance was needed in the first place. Trusting your intuition is an act of self-respect. The earlier you listen, the less emotional damage accumulates. You don't need permission to protect your peace. You don't need validation to step back from what drains you. Clarity replaces guilt when you realize this. You are allowed to choose environments that support your nervous system. Letting go doesn't mean you failed. It means you noticed something wasn't right, and you responded. That awareness is growth. And when guilt fades, something else takes its place. Calm. Not excitement, not intensity, just calm. And that calm is what makes real connection possible. When you stop forcing connection, something important changes. You stop chasing people. You stop proving yourself. You stop performing. And in that quieter space, authentic friendships become easier to recognize. Real friendship does not start with intensity. It doesn't rush. It doesn't pressure you to open up faster than you're ready. It grows slowly through consistency, respect, and emotional safety. One of the biggest mistakes people make is confusing chemistry with compatibility. You can laugh with someone, enjoy their company, and still not be emotionally aligned. Chemistry starts connections, but values sustain them. Here's a key shift that protects your peace. Stop asking, "Do they like me?" and start asking, "Do I feel calm with them?" Your nervous system gives honest answers. In healthy friendships, you don't feel tense before meeting. You don't replay conversations afterward. You don't question where you stand. You feel steady. Consistency matters more than closeness. Someone who shows up in small, reliable ways over time is safer than someone who is emotionally intense but unstable. Real friendship feels predictable in a good way. There is no emotional guessing. Reciprocity is another foundation. Healthy friendships don't require one person to carry all the emotional weight. Both people listen. Both people give. Both people respect boundaries. If you are always adjusting, always explaining, always making space while shrinking yourself, that is not connection. That is emotional labor. This is an important hook. If being yourself risks the relationship was never safe. Depth should never require self-erasure. At the same time, authentic friendship also asks something from you. It requires honesty without cruelty, presence without control, support without losing yourself. Being emotionally mature means you don't overgive, but you also don't close off. You stay open, but selective. Not every connection needs to become deep. Some relationships are meant to stay light, and that's healthy. The problem begins when surface-level connections are forced to carry emotional weight they were never built for. When you allow relationships to find their natural level, pressure disappears. And pressure is what kills real connection. Over time, your circle may become smaller. That often scares people. But fewer relationships with real emotional safety are far more regulating to the nervous system than many shallow ones. Quality restores you. Quantity drains you. You don't build authentic friendship by searching harder. You build it by becoming clearer. Clear about your boundaries. Clear about how you want to feel around people. Clear about what you will no longer tolerate. That clarity acts like a filter. Emotionally mature people feel comfortable around it. Emotionally unsafe patterns fall away naturally. And here's the final truth most people never hear. Real friendship is not about avoiding loneliness. It's about choosing emotional resonance. When your relationships stop draining you, life feels lighter, not because it became easier, but because your nervous system is no longer fighting your environment. And from that place of calm, connection finally feels real.